What was the mind shift that actually enabled you to then see beyond where you were at?
Well, I mean, honestly, I feel like writing my memoir during my last incarceration, which I finished 5 minutes before release in 2019. And I didn't publish it until December of last year, so it was recently published. But I feel like that was kind of a major shift for me. I mean, it showed me that I could see something through to the end, and I could stick with something and, take something that was originally just a thought and make it a finished thing. And that was very validating. And then, I'd share bits and pieces of it with, inmates and counselors and staff along the way. And just the reception that I was getting was just very, very good. So it was landing the way that I hoped it would. So that kind of, I guess it reframed what I wanted from my life. And, I'd say it changed the lens that I see the world through. And I feel like I pulled lessons out of it that I otherwise wouldn't have. Like if I hadn't been, writing my story as I went through that, I might not have grown to the same extent that I did, as a result of it.
Right, right. Yeah, I'm just at the very end, literally that last polished editing of the book. And it's amazing, that whole process. So I can see why you'd say that was a mind shift for you, because as I've gone through the whole process myself over the last many months, putting it together, it's been a really cool experience to go through.
Yeah, and I mean, editing, that's its own beast. I mean, that's I was with that my worst enemy. I self-edited and I read my book 8 times, and by the end I was tired of reading my story. I mean, I wrote it, and then
Yeah.
it's a lot. I mean, that's something that I'd say for people, considering writing a book, budget for an editor. You'll be doing yourself a favor.
Yeah, I think I'm on version 22. And, and I don't know how many times I've read it, but we've just finished, I think, the last edit. I'm actually just waiting for one person. I mentioned them in the book, and I need to have them sign a release. And then I can leave them in the book, which is really, it's a key part in a certain section. And so then I can move that forward. So yeah, you're right. It's a really amazing process to go through, because mine's kind of a memoir as well that focuses on how men can transition on those things, which is what you were talking about a moment ago, how our lives transition, whether you're from the military going into civilian life or whatever you mentioned. Is it Caroline, did you say?
Yeah.
What happened with Caroline, that was a transition for you as well, going from that relationship to now not having that there.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. And it's just kind of periods where, where our circumstances change dramatically. And, a lot of times we kind of lose track of ourselves in that process, or even before that process. And I mean, it could be losing a job at mid-age, that can be a very kind of identity shaking thing. And I mean, there's a lot of different scenarios where I'd call it an identity crisis or whatever you want to call it,
Right.
It can occur.
What were some of the tools? What were some of the things that you found? Probably, I would think, as you discovered that when you were writing your book, but what were some of the tools that you found that actually helped you to be able to work through? You said you finished your book in 18?
20.
Is that right? 19. Okay. And so what were some of those tools that you've used to go from incarcerated and going through a whole bunch of different programs to where you are now, where you've got, you have your book and you have your programs and you have the things that you're doing to help other people?
I mean, I'd say like the biggest thing is getting honest, and that's getting honest with yourself and with others. And, I feel like that's a very cleansing process, when we kind of empty our closets and there's not really anything left to find. I mean, that's
Right.
can be very, very healing. And it's not even just kind of that, it's just kind of like looking at our past and what we've done to others, what others have done to us, and just kind of coming to a place of acceptance. So our
Right.
past no longer affects our today and our tomorrow.